On the third day, I wrote, on the night of January 35th, my stepson, William Daniel Rivas, age 29, was struck and killed by a westbound tractor-trailer rig on I-40 just west of the Walnut Canyon exit at approximately mile 203.5. Danny was on foot at the time he was hit. Due to the nature and the extent of his injuries, it is my belief that he died instantly. His body went underneath the truck and was horribly mangled. I was given the opportunity to examine the accident scene and his remains early that morning, but I declined. I'd been a witness to the aftermath of these horrific types of events more times than I care to remember in my professional career, and I felt no need to subject myself unnecessarily to yet another one, especially one involving someone I knew and loved. My closure will come without that. The old, drawn look on the young, thin face of DPS Officer Nathan Gould as we sat at my dining room table at 4:15 in the morning was enough for me. A knowing moment passed between us as he spoke, and for just an instant, I was able to see through his small, square, gold wire glasses and look into and through his eyes. And in that moment, I saw everything I needed to see. On the first day, I wrote, "The highway gives, the highway takes away, and I am chilled and sad. Today, the highway gives what is left to the crows. Last night, the highway took you away. The highway gives, the highway takes away, and I am chilled and sad. The highway gave me so much, and now the highway has taken so much, and now the highway has taken its due. The highway gives, the highway takes away." On the third day, I wrote, "I remember when you began to refer to me as your stepfather, when you chose me, and I thought, oh shit, what have I gotten myself into? Your mother and I were living together, and you had paroled out of Adobe Mountain to my house and the little decrepit 12-foot 1952 Shasta travel trailer that sat on jack stands in my backyard, missing a wheel and abandoned on the side of I-17 with a busted axle. It was another gift from the highway. We used it as guest quarters. I remember your mom cleaning the trailer in preparation for your homecoming with the vigor and dedication that only the highest quality crystal methamphetamines can inspire. She had promised you that this time things would be different, and for a while they were. I gave your mom the money to buy you new clothes. I put you to work, the first job you ever had. But you were quickly back in the thick of things and behind bars again. I put on a nice shirt and went to court with your mother. I don't recall what I said to Judge Hendricks, but it must have been good because against all odds and over the strenuous objections of the prosecutor, she released you to me. It was then, I think, that you chose me to be your father figure. Your freedom was always temporary and short-lived. You violated the terms of your release one too many times, fled my house and your probation officer with a Star Model 1911 .45 automatic pistol you took from my dresser drawer. Once again, you were sent back to prison, only 16 years old, but this time as an adult. You paroled out again a year later, but this time to Tucson, where you were anonymous instead of infamous, and where your older sister was beginning to establish herself. We all felt it would be a better place for you to try and make a go of things. And make a go of things you did, all kinds of things. I got you a job working for my little brother, but you were also into the streets as deep as you could go, as fast as you could go. One night, you shot a man in the parking lot of a South Tucson liquor store with a .44 Magnum in a gang-related shooting that was all caught on the liquor store's grainy surveillance cameras. It was not too long before Tucson PD knew who you were, but you had gotten wise in the ways of the cops and the streets, You frustrated them, slipping out of their grasp and out of windows time and time again. You were even arrested once with false identification and released before they figured out who they actually had. When the police realized their mistake, they tore South Tucson and Corona block up looking for you to no avail. They could not catch you, and it was not long before you were listed as Tucson's most wanted. Your picture on the Tucson local news station every night, you were nowhere to be found. Vanished north, the highway gave you the gift of freedom. You called us one day from Santa Fe, New Mexico, broken on the run. After a few long-distance calls, we wired you money for a bus ticket to Denver. There, an old trusted outlaw friend and business partner of mine picked you up, and took you to his place in Cortez, Colorado. There he had a good business trafficking in stolen guns, methamphetamines, stolen cars, and Indian artifacts. The story was that you were his half-breed nephew from the big city, come to see what country living was like. You hid out there for many months, living in a big cabin cruiser parked on a travel trailer beside one of his barns. But ultimately, the call of the streets and your homeboys and the cholos with the dark eyes was too much for you to resist, and you returned to South Tucson. Shortly after you returned, you were caught again and ultimately convicted of attempted murder. You did 9 years. You were far from a model prisoner. Sentenced to 7, you managed to pick up 2 more years for crimes you committed while inside, and 4 of those years were spent in segregation for assaulting guards and gang activity. By the time you were released, you were 27 years old and had been in state custody or under state court supervision since you were 11 years old. On the first day I wrote, just a few weeks ago, you were telling me how for the first time in your life you were finally free. Free from the courts and the prisons, free from the parole officers and the system, free from the gangs and the warfare and the code of those mean streets and prison yards. Finally, at age 29, for the first time in your whole life, you were free to choose what your life was going to be. Finally, I am free to be something or nothing, you told me, but the choice is mine. I've never had that, you said. Well, I'm glad you got it, Danny boy. I'm just so sad it was so short. On the third day I wrote, when you paroled out 2 years ago, you stayed in Tucson. I saw you a few times and talked to you on the phone on a regular basis. It became pretty clear to me that while your intentions were good, the streets and the life were calling. This became more and more apparent as the months went by. Once you were off parole, you moved even closer to your old crew. Finally, you confided in me that you had returned to your old gang as a leader, an OG, someone to be feared and respected. And with your old running partner who had been building a small operation on the outside while you had spent all those years on the inside, had now organized them along the lines with the discipline of a prison gang. You said that your crew had become the most powerful set in Tucson, that people were getting both jumped in and hurt every week, and that you were beginning to draw the attention of law enforcement. You told me that you did not want to go back to prison, and that you were worried that you had created a monster that was now over 100 soldiers deep. You asked me if I could help you get a new start in Flagstaff, if you could figure out a way to get yourself out of your set with honor. I told you yes, but only if you could get yourself out without any strings, that I would not permit you to disrupt my life with any bullshit from down south. You succeeded and arrived in Flagstaff in October. Your aunt gave you a place to stay, and I had some work for you. You began to do a little tattooing, something you had picked up in prison. in the old unused tattoo shop that is at my place. You even got some business cards printed up. I helped you get a little job at the Orpheum doing security work for some much needed extra cash. You still had an awfully long way to go, but it seemed like you were beginning to make better choices. I was pretty proud of you. I was proud and also happy to see that you were still an artist, that you had not lost your gift for words, that you were still a poet and a storyteller, that in spite of everything you had put yourself through, you could still smile and laugh, still cry when you spoke about how much you loved your mom, no matter how hard she made it sometimes. It seemed to me, for the first time in all the years I'd known you, that maybe, just maybe, you were not headed for the abyss. But the highway had different plans. The highway gives. The highway takes away. On February 7th, 2012, at 11:05 a.m., my sister-in-law wrote, "It'll be good to have the funeral done with Thursday. Anna, I guess, is the worst stress point." Anna was his mother. "Noah finally filled me in yesterday. The fact that Dee was throwing rocks at trucks makes me quite a lot less sympathetic. It would be better to come either Friday afternoon or Saturday morning and stay until Monday for us. But as I wrote, I'll arrange with John if that doesn't work for you." On February 7th, 2012, I wrote back, "No, the stress for me is really that Danny is dead, and in spite of the fact that he was not a good kid and was not a good grown-up yet either, I really cared about him. And I saw a lot of potential in him, both as a human being and an artist. I'm saddened that nothing will come of this, and saddened that he is gone. I'd be a liar if I didn't tell you that I was also a little bit relieved. I'm glad he died just being foolish, as opposed to all the other things that could have happened. I'm also glad he died free, even if it meant free to be foolish. I'm going to miss him an awful lot in any case. I'll let you know what I'm doing as soon as I know what I'm doing. Please try to keep everyone else in one piece. Please. Lots of love, Jesse." I-40, mile 203.5 westbound. It is a soft August afternoon. The monsoons have blessed us with an abundance of moisture. This year and today's afternoon's rains have come and gone. It's close to 5 p.m. and the sun sits low on the western horizon, basking everything in a golden low-light glow that photographers love so much. Along the ditch and on the road cut, the wildflowers and the new grasses are alive with greens and purples and yellows. The micas and the quartzes sparkle from the rocky ground they grow from. The breeze is strong and smells of life, smells of rain and sage and cow pies on the high desert. Rain, a life giver and a life taker, here among the flatlands, canyons, and washes of the high country of the Colorado Plateau. And now this spot on I-40 has become both life giver and life taker for me, a place of both the yin and the yang, sorrow and joy, wealth and loss. The last time I spent time here, a tractor-trailer rig loaded with carrots from Michigan had left the highway 100 yards from this spot, rolled over and burned, spilling its load of carrots down the embankment. It took almost 24 hours to clean it up, and the bill was close to $16,000. Now we are two vehicles, pulled over here in the ditch alongside the westbound lane of Interstate 40, a white Chevy Malibu and a full-size Toyota pickup truck. A sign 50 feet in front of us proclaims, "Flagstaff City Limit." To our right is a steep cut bank where the interstate slices through a small hill. To our left, light traffic and heavy trucks roll by, seemingly immune to our presence. In the median between the east and westbound traffic, and on top of the cut bank, pale green pinions and alligator juniper grow. Beside us in the ditch and climbing partway way up the cut bank is a cross outlined in stones laid out on the ground. The ground inside the cross is covered with little drops of light blue and dark blue glass my 5-year-old nephew calls dragon tears. In the center is a small white plastic cross, tilted but supported by a mass of weathered, burned-out prayer candles and votives, whiskey bottles, a few soggy blunts, and some damaged plastic flowers litter the ground. At first glance, these offerings seemed few, but when his mother and his sister and his aunt gather them up, they fill a white plastic kitchen trash bag. They remove everything but the cross of rocks and the dragon tears. In the back of my truck are 2 60-pound bags of post mix and a steel cross. One at a time, I put the bags of post mix on my shoulder and switchback my way up the cut bank, moving from flat spot to flat spot among the rocks like a 290-pound mountain goat. I carry both bags to the top of the cut bank without ever losing my footing. I am proud of myself. The cross itself is another matter. It was fabricated by friends who refused payment at a local welding shop. It is made of solid steel plate, 3/8 of an inch thick and 6 inches wide. It is 3 feet across and stands nearly 6 feet tall. The 5 letters of my stepson's last name have been cut out of the steel at the center of the cross with an oxyacetylene torch. It looks as raw and unfinished as he was. This afternoon's monsoon rains have already begun to rust it. I drag it out of the back of my truck and lay it upright against the bottom of the steep slope of the cut bank. I take a heavy climbing rope I have brought for this purpose and loop it around the center of the cross, tossing the other end of the rope up to his aunt and another woman at the top of the hill. They pull the cross up the cut bank as I scramble alongside it, freeing it each time it gets stuck. His mother remarks at my ingenuity. A large Chevy Suburban pulls up to join us. Out of it climbs the only other man I would be proud to call my son. He is big like me, but there the resemblance ends. I sat in a place of honor with his mother and stepfather in the ceremonial hogan at his wedding. Navajos are leery of death. His presence here is a testament to the bond between us. He scrambles up the cut bank carrying a 6-foot rock bar and a post hole digger. The first hole is relatively easy digging, but the cross blends into the juniper tree behind it. The second hole is not easy digging, but the cross stands out in stark relief on the top of the hill against the sky. I face it towards the traffic in the east, to the dawn and the rising sun. So much of his life was lived burning like the dying, setting sun, that in death I choose to face him towards the east and the promise of the new day that I hope he has finally found. Thank you.